Urban legends. They ignite the storyteller in us all. We hear them, and soon they become stories passed down through generations. North Carolina urban legends are spooky, fun, and sometimes downright disturbing. Considering the state is full of mysterious mountains and rugged coastline, legends from the Old North state involve murder, mayhem, and tragic specters on land and sea. Today, we will look at 10 of the many urban legends North Carolina has to offer. There was once a lonely cabin on Brook Cove Road in Stokes County, known by many as the Old Lawson Home. The house was a backdrop to a horrific murder that left 8 people dead and the land haunted by spirits not able to move on. It all started on Christmas Day in 1929 when Charlie Lawson, a respected tobacco farmer, shot and bludgeoned to death for reasons still unknown his wife and 6 of his 7 children before killing himself in the nearby woods. Charlie first shot his daughters Carrie, age 12, and Maybelle, age 7, as they were headed out to visit their aunt and uncle. He waited for them by the barn until they were in range and shot them both. To make sure they were dead, he bludgeoned them and then put their bodies in the barn. Next, Charlie returned to his house and shot his wife, who was on the porch. When Marie, age 17, heard the gunshots, she started screaming, and the 2 younger boys, James, age 4, and Raymond, age 2, tried to find a hiding place. Charlie then went inside and shot Marie, then found the 2 boys and killed them. He then bludgeoned to death the baby, Mary Lou, age 4 months. After the murders, he went to the nearby woods and shot himself. The only survivor was his oldest son, Arthur, age 16, whom he sent on an errand before committing the murders. Some people claim Charlie went crazy, driven mad by a head injury he received while plowing farmland. There were also rumors that Charlie was having an incestuous relationship with his older daughter, Marie, and when she became pregnant, he couldn't bear the shame that would befall him and his family. Still, others claimed Charlie had always been a monster, with evil lurking inside, waiting for the perfect time to be revealed. After the killings, Charlie and the family were buried in a mass grave in Walnut Cove. Because of the strict Baptist beliefs at the time, the mass grave was located just outside of hallowed ground at the church. Because of this, it is believed by many that the Lawson family spirits cannot find peace in death. Strange happenings at their grave sites have been reported, with many saying that nothing, not even the leaves in the fall, can be placed on the grave. Not long after the murders, the house was turned into a tourist attraction, with people coming from miles around to see the home where such horror took place. Visitors started reporting feeling dread and a suffocating sadness that surrounded them. The home was finally closed, but that didn't stop the curious from sneaking in and trying to capture paranormal activity. Some of those people reported seeing 2 small children playing in and around the home, and later, when they see the picture of the Lawson family, they realize the children they saw were the spirits of the murdered children. Sometime after closing the home, the floorboards were torn up and used to build a bridge across the creek on the land. Soon after completion, the stories began. Legends say that when you drive across the bridge, an eerie fog will surround your car and it will mysteriously shut off. As condensation appears on the windows, you will see small handprints covering the surface. Finally, when your car does start, an early 1930s car will chase you, following closely through the winding roads, then disappears quickly as it appeared. In Asheville, North Carolina, the Zealandia Bridge, also known as Helens Bridge, was built in 1909 as a carriage road to and from the Zealandia estates. Demolition of the bridge was considered in 1998 when pieces of stone began to drop, but it was saved and still stands today. Despite its beauty, the bridge is famous for the dark legends that surround it. According to legends, a young mother named Helen lived with her daughter nearby. She lost her daughter to a fire. Devastated at the loss, Helen hung herself from the bridge. Another version links Helen to the Zealandia estates, saying that her daughter actually died in a fire that happened there. And yet another version to this legend says Helen was the mistress of the estate's owner, John Evans Brown, and hung herself at the bridge when she found out she was pregnant with his child. There have been multiple reports of car troubles at the bridge, with many reporting car troubles after the visit. While most haunted bridges seem to cause some kind of car trouble, seems something darker might be at work here. People are reporting that even a week after visiting the bridge, their car suddenly breaks down, or they start seeing shadow figures out of the corner of their eyes. Not only are there reports of Helen's apparitions seen around the bridge, but other strange dark apparitions have also been reported. Some describe seeing monster-like creatures lurking behind the dense bushes, and others report that they have been slapped, punched, or scratched by something unseen. North Carolina is home to many ghosts and legends, but Helens Bridge seems to be the place where there is the most paranormal activity. Pirates are usually considered the bad guys, but it's hard not to sympathize with them over the British Navy of the time. Most pirate crews were treated better and paid better than the Navy crews, and pirate crews were on ships by choice, while Navy crews were pressed into service. Pirate ships were also a democratic institution, with the captain being elected by the crew based on competence and fairness as a leader. Decisions on where and when to sail would be put to a vote, and the captain's authority was only absolute during battle. In the British Navy at the time, captaincy of the ship was based on being born into the right family, as opposed to any ability to competently lead a crew. Another important factor to remember is who and what the pirates were stealing from. Most of the ships passing through the Atlantic Ocean at the time were holding slaves. When one of these ships was intercepted, the slaves would be freed, with many offered the opportunity to join the crew. With slim chances of ever returning home, many took the offer. According to records, half of any given pirate ship crews in the early 18th century were composed of freed Africans. Blackbeard roamed the seas from the West Indies to the Carolinas from 1716 to 1718. When he went into battle, he was known to strap multiple pistols and cutlasses to his body. The most terrifying thing he was said to have done was weave fuses into his long black beard and set them on fire just before stepping onto the captured ship. Most captains would surrender without a shot being fired. Blackbeard's reign came to an end on November 22, 1718, when Virginia Governor Alexander Spotswood sent the ship commanded by John Maynard down the coast of North Carolina to track and kill Blackbeard. Maynard surprised Blackbeard and his skeleton crew that were anchored at Teach's Hole. During the battle, Blackbeard was shot 5 times and stabbed 20 times. The pirate crew was all killed or captured. Blackbeard's head was cut off and hung on the bowsprit of Maynard's ship, and his body thrown overboard. Legends say that Blackbeard's headless body swam about Maynard's ship 3 times before finally sinking. Since then, legends say Blackbeard's ghost haunts Teach's Hollow. Many people have reported a mysterious light under the water in the cove, which they claim to be the spirit of Blackbeard swimming the waters looking for his head. There are also legends that on stormy nights, you can hear Blackbeard's voice calling out in the wind, "Where's my head?" While Blackbeard's viciousness has gone down in history, there is no record of him ever killing anyone other than in his final battle. It seems his show, with the large arsenal and flaming beard, was deliberately done to avoid a fight. Blackbeard understood having the reputation of being the big, bad, bloodthirsty pirate could save him the trouble of actually being one. In the rolling hills of southern Chatham County, in the woods near Harper's Crossroads, is the most famous haunted place in North Carolina. The Devil's Tramping Ground is a mysterious, perfectly round barren circle about 40 feet in diameter. No tree, flower, weed, or even a single blade of grass will grow within the circle. Seeds sowed there refuse to sprout. Any plants transplanted there will wither and die. And the strangest thing, any object left in the circle before sunset will be violently moved outside of the circle by dawn. Dogs are said to tuck their tails between their legs and whimper when brought near the circle and will refuse to enter the circle's boundaries. People have tried to spend the night in the circle, but nobody has succeeded to remain sane. Something they see while in the circle drives them mad, never to recover. According to legends, the devil himself spends his nights pacing around the circle, thinking of ways to bring human souls to damnation. It is said that his scorching heat from his cloven hoof prints is what kills off the vegetation and has made the soil barren. Anything left in the circle, he angrily pushes out with his great strength, even the heaviest of objects. When the devil walks his private circle, he drops the illusion he disguises himself when he does appear to humans. In his natural state, his face is so terrifying, no person can look upon it and remain sane. The mysterious legend of the Devil's Tramping Ground has been around since Chatham County was founded before the Revolutionary War. For many generations, the story has been passed down, and despite scientists' effort to explain the barren patch of land, there has not been any satisfying explanation given. If you ever find yourself driving down State Road 1100 in Chatham County at night, and you pass a curve in the road where there is a narrow path leading into the woods, and you see a shadowy figure moving in between the trees, you should drive away as fast as you can and never look back. In Beaufort, there is an old cemetery simply called the Old Burying Grounds, and it is one of the oldest cemeteries with the earliest grave dated 1711. There is one grave that has a sad yet strange story to tell. In the mid-18th century, the Slough family traveled from England to North Carolina colony with their infant daughter. Slough was a merchant captain, and he built a beautiful house along the Beaufort waterfront that still stands today. Despite all their good fortune, the mother was homesick for England and would often talk about home. Slough's daughter grew up hearing the stories from her mother and longed to see the land where she was born. She would beg her father to take her with him whenever he sailed, but he refused, knowing life at sea was hard and no place for a child. Eventually he gave in, and her mother consented under one condition. No matter what happened, he would bring their daughter back to Beaufort. He agreed, and soon they set sail for England. Slow's daughter was happy to finally see the land of her birth and marveled at everything. On the trip home, about a week out of port, the girl got sick and died. The captain could not bear the thought of his daughter being buried at sea, and he remembered the promise to his wife and did the only thing he could think of to preserve her body for the rest of the voyage. He put her body into one of the many barrels of rum and sealed it shut. When he returned home, he broke the news to his wife, who was devastated. Not wanting to upset her more by exposing her to the condition of their daughter's body from being soaked in rum for months, he arranged for his daughter to be buried in the cemetery with the barrel of rum as her casket. Today, the Rum Girl grave is one of the most loved tombs in North Carolina. Visitors leave toys, flowers, and stuffed animals and other items of affection for her. But there are some that say her story doesn't end here. There were reports of people seeing a young girl running and playing in the graveyard. The tributes left behind for the girl have been found moved around the cemetery overnight, and often found in places that they couldn't have been moved to by the wind. Sadly, in 2016, the Rum Girl's grave was badly damaged by vandals who set fire to the wooden marker. The Beaufort Historical Society is hopeful that the grave can be restored. Bladenboro is a small town surrounded by forests and swamps at the southeastern edge of North Carolina Piedmont. It is also home of a vampire beast. On December 29, 1953, a woman heard her neighbor's dogs barking and whimpering, so she went out to check. To her surprise, she saw a cat-like creature walking off into the darkness. That was the first sighting of the beast of Bladenboro. 2 days later, on New Year's Eve, Police Chief Roy Forbes was called to Woody Storm's farm. Something large and strong killed 2 of his dogs, completely draining them of blood. Then more reports of the beast started to come in. The chief was swamped with calls from all over the county, all reporting dogs being attacked by an animal they described as looking like a bear or a panther, and that it was 3 feet long, 20 inches high, with a long tail and a cat-like face. Other people reported hearing the beast's screams coming from the swamps near town, saying it sounded like a woman with a knife stuck in her back. On January 1st, 2 more dogs drained of blood were found, and the chief called in a team of professional hunters to track the animal. The chief joined the tracking party and reported seeing footprints the size of silver dollars. Then the worst happened. On January 5th, the beast of Bladenboro attacked a human. Mrs. Kinslaw heard the sounds of whimpering dogs outside, and she went to check on them. There, rushing towards her, she saw a cat-like creature. Mrs. Kinslaw screamed, and her husband rushed outside, scaring the beast, and it ran back into the woods. When the newspapers picked up the story, Bladenboro soon became overwhelmed with hunters eager to bag the beast. The thing was, nobody knew exactly what they were hunting. Some people thought it was the Carolina panther, thought to have gone extinct in the early 20th century. Others believed it was a coyote or a stray dog. But everyone agreed that the only way to find out for sure what the beast was would be to kill it. By now, the whole town was terrified. When the sun set, everyone went inside and didn't come out until sunrise, unless it was absolutely necessary. The Bladenboro mayor and chief decided that things were getting too dangerous, and they called an end to the hunt. They took an unusually large bobcat that a farmer had trapped and hung it up the flagpole in the center of town on January 13th. They posted a sign underneath saying, "This is the beast of Bladenboro." About a week later, the hunters left, reports of killing stopped, and things returned to normal. Whatever the beast was vanished back into the night. Lake Norman is North Carolina's largest man-made lake and is a popular place for swimmers and boaters to come visit. But beware, there is something terrifying beneath the waters of Lake Norman. Formed between 1959 and 1964, Lake Norman is fed by the Catawba River and is one of the largest man-made lakes in North Carolina. It has over 500 miles of shoreline that covers 4 counties and 32,000 acres. Lake Norman also provides electricity to the Piedmont region. When it was created, most of the existing structures, including homes, bridges, mills, historic battlegrounds, and Native American historical sites, were not demolished, but flooded instead. There are also many grave sites under the water with the headstones removed by Duke Energy, but many of the bodies still remain. Legends say that when they started flooding the lake, people started dumping buckets of fish into the lake so it wouldn't be bare of fish. One fish grew to enormous proportions, and his name is Normie. Normie is usually described as being 20 feet long with a serpent-like body. There have been many people who have claimed to have figured out where this giant fish-like creature came from, saying it was an overgrown garfish or a freshwater eel mutated by sewage runoff from the nearby nuclear power plant. Whatever Normie is, there have been almost as many sightings as Bigfoot, and it has caught the attention of cryptozoologists and underwater investigators from around the world. Brown Mountain is a low ridge in Burke County that, when the conditions are right, mysterious glowing orbs can be seen rising off the mountain. These lights have been seen by many people for generations, but what they are is still unknown. Brown Mountain lights have been seen for centuries and have many legends attached to it. According to Cherokee legends, the lights are the souls of Cherokee women searching for the men who died in the great battle between the Cherokee and the Catawba that took place on the mountain. Other legends say the lights are ghostly lights that appear during a search for a murdered woman in the 19th century. The most famous legend of Brown Mountain lights is a story of a man accompanied by a slave that became lost while hunting on the mountain. The man was never found, but the slave returns every night with a lantern to search for him, carrying on his search beyond the grave. This version of the legend was recorded in song in the 1950s by Scott Wiseman and Myrtle Eleanor Cooper, who were both North Carolina natives. There have been several scientific explanations for the lights, from swamp glass to reflections of car headlights from the valley below. Every explanation given so far has been easily disapproved. The lights have been seen before cars existed, and there are no swamps on Brown Mountain. Some have even said the lights may be a naturally occurring electrical discharge by the slow movement of the fault line below the mountain. Whatever the cause, people still flock to see the mysterious lights of Brown Mountain. The best chance to see these lights are on a dry, clear night in October or November, after all the leaves are off the trees. Brown Mountain is part of the Pisgah National Forest. For years, a strange, unexplainable light emerges from a graveyard in Fremont and travels to the nearby railroad tracks. The light hovers around the tracks. If it is approached, the light will move closer as if asking a question. Right before sunrise, it travels back to the graveyard and disappears into a particular grave. More than a century ago, horse racing, cockfighting, and gambling were common pastimes, and Fremont, being right on the new railroad between Wilson and Greensboro, would have festivities every summer. People would visit from all over just to take part, and of course, all the whiskey that flowed that day. One of the regulars, a local man named Bolton, was a very large man as well as a heavy drinker. When there was racing or gambling, Bolton could be found working the crowd, performing feats of great strength in exchange for a drink. His signature trick was smashing whiskey barrels with his head. One day during the festivities, when the crowd was larger and more generous than normal, Bolton had more to drink than normal and began bragging that he could smash anything with his head. He was soon breaking glass bottles and 2x4s without feeling any pain. The more he drank, the more he bragged, until finally declaring he could stop a train with his head. The crowd, as drunk as Bolton, cheered him on as he swaggered down to the tracks. He stood right in the middle with his big head sticking out in the direction of the arriving train. The sound of the oncoming train was enough to sober a few people in the crowd, and they tried to pull Bolton off the tracks, but he refused, yelling he was tougher than any train. The train soon proved him wrong. The crowd gathered what remained of Bolton and took him down to the graveyard and buried him, then went back to drinking and carousing, which they figured was the wake Bolton would have wanted. To this day, that strange light has been reported to come out of Bolton's grave, traveling to the spot on the tracks where he met his end. People who have gotten close enough to the light claim to see a large human skull inside. Some have even heard a spectral voice asking if they had any whiskey to spare. Some people have no problem breaking a promise, while others try, but still fall short. Then there are those that even death cannot stop them from fulfilling their promise. Built in 1838, the Hardin House was home of William Hardin, a prominent politician in the Pittsboro, North Carolina area. The lovely old house was known for its manicured yard and gently sloped down to a beautiful spring. It is at this spring in 1839 that a promise was made between two young lovers. Helen Hardin and Philip Jones were to be married that June. Just a couple weeks before the wedding day, the two lovers met at the spring to discuss wedding plans. The warm night air was filled with the sweet smell of flowers, with the full moon and the starlit sky. Philip was waiting by the spring for his beloved. When Helen came out of the house, she was wearing a beautiful, flowing white gown, and the moonlight reflected on her blonde hair. When she reached the spring, Philip took her into his arms, saying, "You are just like an angel. Promise me you'll stay just the way you are tonight." Helen promised shyly. The lovers spent the evening talking, and time seemed to stand still. Before long, Helen's father called her back home. Philip watched his beloved run back up the hill, but little did he know that would be the last time he would see her alive. That night in her sleep, Helen died of a heart attack. Devastated and longing to see his angel again, Philip returned to the spring every night and waited. People around town began to worry about Philip, until one moonlit night, a local preacher new to the area told of riding by the spring and seeing a young man and girl in a white dress with golden hair by the spring behind the Hardin house. He asked around about their identity because he knew the Hardin family didn't have a daughter. Philip never married and continued to come to the spring every night the moon was full. Many people have reported seeing the beautiful girl in the flowing white dress standing by the spring with Philip. The Harden house has changed owners many times through the years, and people who don't know the history still report seeing the ghost of Helen Harden in her white flowing dress and the moonlight shining through her hair, running down the slope to the spring, then suddenly disappearing. Even in death, she continues to keep her promise.